I always wanted to make movies as a kid. My dad and I would go, I'd spend weekends with him and we would go see whatever the big blockbuster was. Typically we would go to a movie Friday night, Saturday we'd go to a Sunday matinee, and then he would bring me home. And so that was sort of our bonding experience, and I just really got into it. But when I was a kid, you couldn't get your hands on cameras like you can now. Everything was really expensive and really hard to get a hold of, so I got into comic books instead because I could afford a pencil and a paper. I just kind of taught myself how to draw. It's always just been about storytelling for me. I really like to tell stories and to learn stories and read stories. And so I sort of went the long way around to get to film just because I couldn't afford it. There weren't film classes in high school, or you didn't have broadcasting classes the way that a lot of schools around here do now, so I just had to make do with what I had. But I loved cartoons and I loved all that sort of stuff, so I'd studied graphic design and illustration in college and kept doing political cartoons for the college newspaper, and then decided to go to film school from there. So I went to film school at Ohio University in Athens. A lot of the solutions that I've heard are people, kicking things around. It's not really had a big cultural buy-in from the Appalachian people. And I think it's going to take that as a whole for everyone to sort of get behind some sort of movement or get behind some new initiative. And for me, I don't think it's one thing. It's not one industry or one educational value that we have to do. I think at this point we can start to break off into little subsections, and you have a pocket that's interested in one thing here and a pocket 2 counties away that's interested in something else. I think one of the constants and one of the great things to come out of this sort of transition that we're in now is a heightened need or a heightened look at education, and what are some things that we can do here to educate young people and to educate workforce of any age, honestly, and sort of get people motivated and help people find sort of things that they're passionate about, find things that they're interested in, and then figure out a way to turn that into some sort of sustainable economy. Appalachian people as a whole like to make things and do things and be, when we don't just do things on a whim. Whatever we get involved in, we're really involved in, and it becomes a part of who we are and a part of what we do. A little over a year ago, I got this idea. I was thinking about sort of my own upbringing and path to the arts and path to film and web design and code and all that sort of stuff, and sort of paired with some of my doctoral study that I'm going through right now on education initiatives across the country and across the world, really. They're doing some really great things out there right now. Code Academy is a great example. You can go there and learn how to, code in JavaScript, code in Python, code in HTML and CSS, and it's completely free. It's one of those Silicon Valley startups that's really trying to get education and those things out there, and there's pockets of that forming all over the country, and people are trying to figure out how to address all the educational needs. India has a huge programming languages in India and programming languages starting in China and some other countries. It's a normal part of curriculum through elementary school and on up. And it's just not been that way here. And so I looked at that opportunity and said, okay, most of America is behind in this. So, education-wise, Appalachia is no further behind than the rest of the country. So if we sort of jump in on this initiative, it might be interesting. As a designer and as an artist, I just like the idea, pairing the word holler and sort of what all it entails and what it sort of brings to mind, and then pairing that with ideas of technology. And that's been one of the most successful parts of the project so far. As I say, I'm working on this online education platform called Holler, and everyone from here just sort of laughs and smiles and says, I want to hear some more. Teaching at UPike, I've seen so many students from Knott County, Letcher County, Perry County, all through Eastern Kentucky, all through Central Appalachia, who are all really interested in film or technology or comics or those sort of visual mediums. And it's like someone in Hazard has no clue that the person at Pike Central exists. They don't talk to each other on a regular basis. There's no way to make those connections. So the first thing I wanted to do was just sort of bridge that gap digitally. And so that's where Holler started. It's just a social network where all those folks who are interested in those sort of things could have a place to talk. And the more I started talking to people about it, the more it just grew, and people started getting interested. And then people had all kinds of ideas for initiatives that I hadn't even thought of. Holler is a two-part site. One part is just a social network, kind of like Twitter or Facebook would be, a little bit more like Facebook. But you join and you have friends, but instead of groups in this website, you have hollers. So there might be one holler that's about graphic design, one holler that's about beekeeping, one holler that's about video production. And so if you've got someone from Knott County who hops on and starts talking about a project they're working on, then someone from Perry County or Rowan County or wherever can hop on and join in that conversation. The other half is an open coursework, kind of like you hear a lot about MOOCs, massive open online courses, which are really interesting, but they're that one-size-fits-all solution. It's here's a class, it's free, you can take it, we hope you can keep up as we go along. So the learning side of the Holler is designed to be a place-based initiative. So it's people from Central Appalachia who are sort of acting as a gateway or an introduction to different topics and discussions that people might be interested in taking a class in. Whether you're 16 and you want to learn how to draw comics and what it would take to be a professional cartoonist, or if you're 40 and you want to make a documentary that you've had in your mind for a long time, you can hop on there, take a few free classes, and it sort of sets you on your way. More than anything, I hope this project gives people in Appalachia a place to just talk to each other and to be creative and to be open and experiment and try to come up with new ideas. It's so important when you're in that sort of brainstorming stage to not get fixated on whatever the end product is going to be. It's going to change 10 times by the time that you complete it, but the most important part is to complete it, is to have an idea, start a project, and then finish it. Even if it's not the greatest comic ever made, it's not the greatest movie ever made, it's not the greatest mobile app ever made, that process of going from beginning to end on something is a great learning experience. And the more that we can help facilitate that, the more that we can be making digital things and be making things with their hands, I think the educational opportunities and the sort of gratification of that could be a very big thing for the region. I think media in Appalachia is about to become a very, viable industry to be in. Creating media these days is nowhere near as complicated or as expensive as it used to be. And so with so many media outlets and so many possibilities for creation, it's just inevitable that it's going to sort of work its way into, the Appalachian area as well. I think if we act quickly and start to get educated on these things, then all of these media companies that will do the core work in Central Appalachia will be people from Central Appalachia doing that work. And so I think if it's our own voice telling a lot of these stories, it's going to combat those stereotypes. It's going to make people a little more comfortable, but it's also going to show that we can use the same technology as anyone else. That sort of stereotype that people here don't know how to use computers and don't have access to the internet and all, that's just kind of ridiculous. We have the same iPhones and laptops as the rest of the country, and I think with a little bit of work we can make whatever we want to make with those things and start seeing those, instead of just communication devices, start seeing those laptops and tablets and phones as tools for creation. The same way 100 years ago you had all of your tools to carve out a chair, or all of your tools to build a cabin, or all of your tools to sort of work the earth. These things are now tools, and we're going to learn to use those as we did those tools in the past.